The Great Hall of the Zelthari hegemony stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal floors. 12 different alien species sat around a massive circular table, each representing thousands of worlds under their combined rule. For over 10,000 years, they had been the undisputed masters of the galaxy. High Chancellor Vexithara stood at the center, her 4 arms gesturing gracefully as she spoke. Her blue skin gleamed under the artificial suns that lit the chamber. Around her, the other species listened with the patience of those who had ruled for millennia. "We have a new problem," she announced, her voice carrying easily through the vast space. "A young species has begun expanding beyond their home system. They call themselves humans." A low rumble of amusement came from the Krogian delegate. His massive rock-like form shifted as he spoke. "Another primitive species trying to reach the stars? How refreshing. We have not had proper entertainment in decades." The ethereal representative, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline shell, pulsed with what might have been laughter. "Their ships use chemical rockets and nuclear fusion. Their weapons fire solid projectiles. They have no energy shields, no gravity manipulation, no quantum tunnels for faster travel." Vexithara nodded, pulling up a holographic display that showed human ships moving between their colonies. The vessels looked crude and bulky compared to the sleek, energy-based craft of the hegemony. "Our scouts report they have established colonies on 17 worlds in the Outer Rim territories. They appear to be expanding rapidly despite their primitive technology." "How rapidly?" asked the Keth delegate, her insect-like mandibles clicking with curiosity. "They have gone from 1 world to 17 in less than 200 of their years," Vexithara replied. "For a species without proper faster-than-light travel, this shows unusual determination." The Maranth representative, a floating jellyfish-like creature, pulsed with different colors as it spoke through a translation device. "Determination means nothing against superior firepower. Their entire fleet could not challenge a single one of our scout ships." Around the table, heads nodded in agreement. The delegates had seen this story before. Young species always thought they could challenge the established order. They always learned otherwise. "What do we know about their military capabilities?" asked the Zephyrian delegate, her crystalline body refracting the light into rainbow patterns. Vexithara gestured, and the hologram changed to show human soldiers and weapons. "They fight with kinetic weapons that fire metal projectiles. Their armor is made of processed metals and ceramics. They use chemical explosives. Their ships carry nuclear weapons of surprising power but crude delivery systems." "Nuclear weapons?" The ethereal's energy form flickered with what seemed like surprise. "How barbaric. Do they actually use them against each other?" "Our intelligence suggests they have done so in the past, yes," Vexithara confirmed. "They appear to have few restrictions on weapons that would be considered war crimes by civilized standards." The Krogian delegate laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "Savages playing with dangerous toys. All the more reason to bring them under proper guidance quickly." "There is something else," Vexithara continued. "Their colonies show unusual construction patterns. Instead of building efficient cities like most species, they spread their populations across entire continents. They build redundant facilities, multiple spaceports, scattered industrial centers." "Inefficient," commented the Keth delegate, "typical of primitive species. They waste resources because they do not understand proper organization." The hegemony had perfected the art of conquest over thousands of years. They would arrive at a primitive world, destroy the main military installations and government centers, and then negotiate with whoever was left in charge. Most species surrendered quickly when faced with technology they could not understand or fight. "Shall we proceed with standard first contact protocols?" asked the Maranth representative. Vexithara shook her head. "These humans have shown no interest in communication. Our scouts attempted contact several times. The humans either ignored the messages or responded with what our translators identify as insults and threats." "How dare they?" The Zephyrian's crystalline form blazed brighter with indignation. "No species has the right to ignore the hegemony's authority." "Indeed," Vexithara agreed. "Which brings us to the matter at hand. These humans must be brought into line. Their rapid expansion threatens the stability of the Outer Rim. If we allow one primitive species to ignore our authority, others might get similar ideas." The room fell silent as the delegates considered this. The hegemony's power rested not just on their superior technology, but on the understanding that resistance was futile. Every species in the galaxy knew that the hegemony was unbeatable. That knowledge kept the peace. "What do you propose?" asked the ethereal. "Complete subjugation," Vexithara said without hesitation. "We will give them one final chance to surrender. If they refuse, we destroy their military forces and occupy their worlds. Any resistance will be crushed immediately." The Krogan delegate slammed one massive fist on the table, causing vibrations that spread across the crystal surface. "Yes, it has been too long since we reminded the galaxy why they should fear us. These humans will make an excellent example. How many fleets will you need?" asked the Keth delegate. Vexithara considered the question. Human technology was primitive, but they had 17 worlds and showed signs of being well armed by the standards of their technology level. The first fleet should be more than sufficient. 300 ships, including 12 dreadnoughts. We can have their surrender within a month. Around the table, the delegates nodded approvingly. The first fleet was more than most species could field for their entire military. Against primitive humans, it would be overwhelming. "Are we all in agreement?" Vexithara asked formally. One by one, the 12 species voted. The result was unanimous. "Then it is decided," Vexithara announced. "The humans will be given 72 standard hours to surrender all their colonies and submit to hegemony authority. If they refuse, the first fleet will enforce compliance." Within hours, the ultimatum was broadcast across human space on all frequencies. The message was clear and simple: surrender everything or face total destruction. The response came back 18 hours later. It was broadcast on the same frequencies the hegemony had used, ensuring every world in their territory would hear it. The message was even simpler than their ultimatum. It consisted of 3 words in the human language called English, along with translations in every known galactic tongue. "Come and take it." Admiral Kethvar, commander of the First Fleet, read the response while standing on the bridge of his flagship. His aide, a young Zelthari officer, looked confused. "Sir, do they not understand the situation? Our fleet could destroy their entire civilization." Kethvar studied the tactical displays showing human positions. Something about their response bothered him, though he could not identify what. "Prepare the fleet for departure," he ordered. "It seems these humans need to learn respect the hard way." As the massive hegemony fleet prepared to jump to human space, none of them realized they were about to encounter something that would change the galaxy forever. They expected a quick war against primitives with crude weapons. They had no idea they were about to face a species that had turned warfare into an art form, during thousands of years of fighting themselves. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship as the First Fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Geneva system. Through the massive viewing screens, he could see the human colony world hanging in space like a blue and brown jewel. "Scan the system," he ordered his tactical officer. "I want to know exactly what we are dealing with." The results came back quickly. New Geneva had a population of 12 million humans spread across 3 continents. The planet had 6 orbital stations, 15 major cities, and what appeared to be a significant military presence. "Sir, we are detecting approximately 200 human vessels in the system," reported the tactical officer. "Most appear to be civilian cargo ships and mining vessels. Only 37 show military configurations." Kethvar nodded with satisfaction. His fleet had 300 ships, 12 of them massive dreadnoughts. The humans were outnumbered nearly 10 to 1, and that was before considering the vast technological superiority of hegemony forces. "Open a channel to the planet," he commanded. "Let us give them one final chance to surrender." The communication screen flickered to life, showing a human female in what appeared to be a military uniform. She had short brown hair and cold blue eyes that studied Kethvar with obvious intelligence. "I am General Sarah Chen, military commander of New Geneva," she said in accented but clear galactic standard. "I assume you are here to accept our surrender?" Kethvar blinked in surprise. "You wish to surrender? Excellent. We require all military forces to power down immediately and prepare for occupation." The human female smiled, and Kethvar felt an unexpected chill. There was something predatory about that expression. "Oh, we are not surrendering," Chen said. "I was asking if you wanted to surrender to us. Last chance." The communication cut off before Kethvar could respond. Around the bridge, his officers stared at the blank screen in disbelief. "Sir," the tactical officer said slowly, "the humans are powering up their weapons. All ships are moving to combat positions." Kethvar shook his head. These primitives clearly did not understand what they faced. Signal the fleet. Standard suppression pattern. Target their military installations and orbital platforms. Minimal civilian casualties. The hegemony had refined their conquest techniques over millennia. They would demonstrate overwhelming superiority, destroy the enemy's ability to fight back, and then negotiate with whoever was left in charge. It was efficient, relatively clean, and almost always led to quick surrender. The First Fleet moved into attack formation, energy weapons charging as they approached the human positions. Kethvar expected the battle to last perhaps an hour. He had no idea that the humans had been preparing for this moment for 60 years. The first sign that something was wrong came when the human cargo ships did not retreat. Instead of fleeing to safety, they accelerated directly toward the hegemony fleet. "Sir, the civilian vessels are on collision courses with our ships," reported the tactical officer. "Should we destroy them?" "Of course," Kethvar said. "They are clearly trying to ram us." Pathetic desperation. The hegemony ships opened fire, their energy weapons slicing through the approaching cargo vessels. But as each ship exploded, Kethvar realized they were not simple cargo ships. They were bombs. The explosions were nuclear, each one massive enough to damage even a hegemony warship. Worse, the humans had packed their ships with radioactive materials that spread clouds of deadly particles through space. "Shields!" Kethvar shouted, but it was too late. 3 of his cruisers were caught in the expanding fireballs, their energy shields overloading from the sheer intensity of the explosions. That was when the human military ships attacked. They did not come from one direction like civilized forces. They came from everywhere at once. Human ships dropped out of hiding spots behind asteroids, emerged from the shadows of the planet's moons, and even rose from the planet's surface on pillars of nuclear fire. But it was not their numbers that shocked Kethvar. It was how they fought. Human ships did not maintain formation. They swarmed like angry insects, each one following its own chaotic path. They fired their primitive kinetic weapons at point-blank range, sometimes ramming hegemony ships after their guns were destroyed. "Sir, the mining stations are firing on us," called the tactical officer. "They have been converted into weapons platforms." Kethvar watched in horror as civilian mining equipment launched massive chunks of metal at his ships. The humans had turned their entire system into a weapon, a human destroyer, its hull torn open and atmosphere streaming from dozens of holes, slammed into the side of one of his cruisers. The impact drove both ships into the gravity well of New Geneva's moon, where they exploded together in a brilliant flash. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, "we are receiving surrender demands from the human fleet." Surrender demands? Kethvar stared at the tactical display. His fleet was winning. They had destroyed nearly half the human ships and were systematically destroying the orbital platforms. What are they talking about? The answer became clear as human fighters, too small for his sensors to track effectively, swarmed over his flagship. They attached devices to the hull before being destroyed by point defense systems. "Sir, they have attached nuclear charges to our armor," the damage control officer reported. "The explosions are not penetrating, but they are irradiating large sections of the ship." Kethvar began to understand. The humans were not trying to win in any conventional sense. They were trying to make victory too expensive to be worthwhile. A human battleship, its main guns destroyed and half its crew compartments exposed to space, deliberately rammed one of his dreadnoughts. The impact crippled both vessels, but Kethvar noticed that the human ship's crew kept firing personal weapons at his ship, even as they died in the vacuum. "Admiral, we have lost 17 ships," reported the tactical officer. "The humans have lost nearly all their military vessels, but they are still fighting." On the planet below, surface-to-space missiles continued to launch. The humans were firing everything they had, including what appeared to be converted industrial equipment. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the hegemony had achieved total victory. Every human military vessel was destroyed. All orbital platforms were eliminated. The planet's defenses were in ruins. But as Kethvar looked at his own losses, he felt sick. 43 ships destroyed, another 60 damaged badly enough to require major repairs. Over 50,000 hegemony personnel dead. The humans had been outnumbered 10 to 1, outgunned 100 to 1, and fighting with primitive technology. Yet they had inflicted casualties that would have been considered acceptable only in a war between equal powers. His communications officer approached hesitantly. "Sir, we are receiving a message from the planet." The screen showed General Chen again. Her uniform was torn and bloody, and the room behind her was filled with smoke. But she was still smiling that predatory smile. "Congratulations on your victory," she said. "I hope it was worth the cost. You have 16 more colonies to take. We will be waiting." The transmission ended. Kethvar stared at the tactical reports, trying to understand what had just happened. In his after-action report, he would write words that would haunt the hegemony leadership. They fight like their species depends on it, because to them, it does. He had no idea that New Geneva had been their smallest, least defended colony. He had no idea that while he was fighting here, the humans were preparing defenses that would make New Geneva look like a training exercise. Most importantly, he had no idea that every second of the battle had been recorded and transmitted to every human world in real time. They had just shown 17 colonies exactly how to make the hegemony bleed. High Chancellor Vexithara read Admiral Kethavar's report for the third time, her forearms trembling with barely controlled rage. The conquest of New Geneva had been successful, but the cost was unacceptable. 43 ships lost to primitives with chemical rockets and metal bullets. "This is impossible," she said to the assembled War Council. "How did savages with primitive technology inflict such casualties on our forces?" General Thakmor, the hegemony's supreme military commander, studied the tactical recordings from the battle. His massive Krogian frame seemed carved from living stone as he spoke. The humans fight without honor. They use their civilian population as weapons. They turn industrial equipment into military assets. They refuse to acknowledge defeat even when their situation is hopeless. "Barbaric," commented Admiral Silnara, her crystalline Zephyrian body reflecting light in angry patterns. No civilized species would sacrifice civilians in such a manner. "Nevertheless," Vexithara said, "they must be dealt with. Prepare the second and third fleets. I want overwhelming force brought to bear on their home system. Once we destroy Earth, the remaining colonies will surrender." General Thakmor shifted uneasily. "Chancellor, perhaps we should reconsider. The humans have had 60 of their years to prepare Earth's defenses. If New Geneva was any indication, New Geneva was an aberration," Vexthara cut him off. "We were unprepared for their unconventional tactics. Now we know what to expect. 3 full battle fleets will be more than sufficient to crush their homeworld." What the hegemony leadership did not know was that every human colony had received detailed recordings of the Battle of New Geneva within hours of its conclusion. They had watched their forces fight against impossible odds, seen their people die rather than surrender, and learned exactly what the hegemony was capable of. More importantly, they had learned what the hegemony was not capable of understanding. Captain Maria Santos stood in the command center buried 3 kilometers beneath the surface of Earth's moon. Around her, hundreds of technicians monitored displays showing the approaching hegemony fleets. 900 ships in total, including 36 dreadnoughts, the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. "They really want to make a statement," said Colonel James Wright, Earth's defense coordinator. 3 full fleets just to take one system. Santos nodded grimly. "Good. The bigger the fleet, the bigger the statement we make when we destroy it." For 60 years, since first contact with alien visitors who had made their contempt for humanity clear, Earth had been preparing for war. Not the limited conflicts that the galaxy was used to, but the kind of total war that humanity had perfected during thousands of years of fighting itself. The hegemony expected to find orbital platforms and defensive fleets. They expected weapons that followed the accepted rules of civilized warfare. They expected an enemy that would surrender when defeat became inevitable. What they found instead was something that had never existed in galactic history: an entire solar system converted into a weapon. The first sign of trouble came when the hegemony fleets reached the edge of the Sol system. Their sensors detected what appeared to be a massive debris field surrounding the Sun at roughly the distance of Earth's asteroid belt. "Admiral," reported the sensor operator aboard the flagship Eternal Glory, "we are detecting approximately 50,000 objects in orbit around the human Sun. Most appear to be metallic debris, but some show power signatures." Admiral Velkarn studied the readings with growing unease. 50,000 objects? What are they?" The answer came in the form of nuclear fire. The debris was actually a network of automated weapons platforms, each one powered by a fusion reactor and armed with nuclear missiles. As the hegemony fleet approached, every single platform activated simultaneously. 50,000 nuclear missiles launched at once, creating a wall of atomic fire that stretched across millions of cubic kilometers of space. The hegemony shields, designed to handle energy weapons and conventional explosives, were overwhelmed by the sheer number of nuclear detonations. But that was only the beginning. As the fleets pushed deeper into the system, they encountered Earth's second surprise. The planet Jupiter, the largest in the human system, had been converted into a massive weapons factory. Automated systems had been mining its moons for 60 years, building ship after ship in hidden facilities. When the human fleet finally revealed itself, Admiral Velkarn understood that the galaxy's understanding of warfare was about to change forever. The human fleet numbered over 2,000 ships. But these were not the crude vessels they had fought at New Geneva. These ships incorporated 60 years of stolen and reverse-engineered hegemony technology, improved with human innovation. Human shields flickered with the same energy patterns as hegemony defenses, but they had been modified to absorb kinetic impacts as well as energy blasts. Human ships moved with gravity drives copied from hegemony designs, but they accelerated faster and turned more quickly than should have been possible. Most terrifying of all, human weapons had evolved. The first hegemony dreadnought died when a human destroyer fired what appeared to be a simple kinetic projectile. The metal slug passed through the alien ship's shields as if they did not exist, punched through 2 kilometers of armored hull, and detonated a nuclear warhead inside the ship's core. "How did they penetrate our shields?" Velkarn demanded. "Sir," his tactical officer replied, voice shaking, "the projectile was not affected by our energy barriers. It appears to be made of some kind of exotic matter that does not interact with our defensive systems." More human weapons followed, missiles that phased in and out of normal space, making them impossible to intercept, energy beams that ignored armor and shields entirely, cooking ship crews alive inside their own vessels, biological weapons that somehow adapted to each alien species' physiology in real time. But the most horrifying moment came when human boarding parties began attacking hegemony ships. The humans did not board to capture. They boarded to kill and learn. Human soldiers encased in armor that incorporated stolen alien technology cut through ship hulls like they were made of paper. They slaughtered the crews with weapons that seemed designed specifically to kill each alien species, then downloaded everything from the ship's computers before destroying the vessel. Admiral Velkarn watched in horror as his fleet was systematically destroyed. The humans fought with a coordination that seemed impossible. Every ship knew exactly where to be. Every weapon fired at precisely the right moment. Every tactic was perfectly executed. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, "we are receiving a message from the human fleet." The main screen activated, showing a human female in military dress. She appeared to be aboard a ship's bridge, and Velkarn could see the battle continuing through the windows behind her. "I am Admiral Elena Vasquez, commander of the Sol Defense Force," she said calmly. "I am prepared to accept your surrender." Velkarn stared at her in disbelief. "Surrender? You are outnumbered 3-1. Even with your technological improvements, we can still destroy you." Admiral Vasquez smiled, and Velkarn felt the same chill that Admiral Cathvar had experienced at New Geneva. "You misunderstand the situation. Look at your tactical display." Velkarn did, and his blood turned to ice. Of his 900 ships, fewer than 400 remained combat effective. The human fleet, despite being outnumbered, had lost only 200 vessels. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Nothing is impossible," Vasquez replied. "You just lack imagination. You have 30 seconds to order your fleet to stand down. If you refuse, we will demonstrate weapons that will make what you have seen so far look like a children's game." Velkarn looked around his bridge. His officers stared at him with expressions of fear and confusion. These were beings who had conquered thousands of worlds, who had never known defeat. For the first time in galactic history, a hegemony fleet commander gave the order to surrender. But even as the remaining ships powered down their weapons, Admiral Vasquez was already planning the next phase of the war. Earth had survived, but that was only the beginning. Now it was time to teach the galaxy what happened when someone declared war on humanity. The news of the Sol Defense Force's victory spread through hegemony space like a virus. 3 full battle fleets, the pride of galactic civilization, had been destroyed or captured by a species that most citizens had never heard of. The impossible had happened. The hegemony had been defeated. High Chancellor Vex Thara stood before the emergency session of the Grand Council, her forearms clasped behind her back as she tried to maintain her composure. Around the great crystal table, Representatives of 12 species sat in stunned silence. "The humans have possession of over 300 of our ships," she reported, her voice carefully controlled. "They have our latest technology, our tactical databases, and thousands of our personnel as prisoners." "How many survivors?" asked the ethereal representative, its energy form flickering with agitation. "Approximately 40,000 crew members across all 3 fleets," Vexithara replied. "The humans have made no demands for their return. They have made no demands at all." That was what worried her most. A civilized species would have used their victory to negotiate. They would have demanded territory, resources, or favorable trade agreements. The humans had done none of these things. For 6 months after the Battle of Sol, the humans had remained silent. Their fleets had not advanced into hegemony space. They had sent no messages. They had simply vanished back into their own territory, taking their captured ships and prisoners with them. The silence was more terrifying than any threat. "What are our intelligence reports from human space?" demanded the Krogan representative. General Thakmore activated a holographic display showing the Outer Rim territories. "Our scouts report massive construction projects throughout human space. New shipyards, weapons factories, and what appear to be training facilities. They are preparing for something big." "Obviously they are preparing for war," said the Keth delegate. "The question is when they will attack." The answer came 2 days later. The first target was a hegemony mining colony in the Vega sector. The colonists woke to find human ships in orbit and a simple message being broadcast on all frequencies. "You have 24 hours to evacuate. Anyone remaining after that time will be considered hostile." The colonial governor immediately contacted the nearest hegemony fleet base, demanding military protection. The response force arrived 6 hours before the deadline, confident that a show of force would drive off the human raiders. They found empty space. The human ships had vanished without a trace. That was when the colonists discovered that their orbital mining platforms had been rigged with nuclear explosives sometime during the night. Every major industrial facility, every spaceport, every defensive installation had been booby-trapped by infiltrators who had somehow bypassed every security system. The bombs detonated exactly 24 hours after the original warning. The colony world was not destroyed, but it was rendered uninhabitable. The message was clear. Humans could strike anywhere, anytime, and there was nothing the hegemony could do to stop them. Over the following months, the pattern repeated across hegemony space. Human fleets would appear at a target system, offer evacuation terms, and then systematically destroy everything of military or industrial value. They never stayed to occupy territory. They simply destroyed what they came to destroy and vanished. The psychological effect was devastating. Hegemony citizens began abandoning border worlds without waiting for human ultimatums. Supply lines collapsed as merchant ships refused to travel routes that might be targeted. Military morale crumbled as base after base was abandoned to the advancing human fleets. But the humans were not simply conducting raids. They were demonstrating capabilities that redefined what warfare meant. Admiral Korathvin read the intelligence reports with growing horror. As commander of the 5th Fleet, he was responsible for defending the core worlds of the Zeltari sector. The reports described human tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. "Sir," his aide reported, "the humans have been broadcasting recordings of their attacks throughout hegemony space. They want everyone to see what they are capable of." The recordings were nightmarish. Human ships appearing from hyperspace in perfect formation, their weapons already charged and targeting solutions computed. Defensive fleets that were destroyed before they could return fire, ground installations that exploded from within, sabotaged by infiltrators who had somehow penetrated security weeks or months earlier. But the most disturbing recordings showed what happened to populations that chose to fight instead of evacuate. The humans had introduced biological weapons that targeted specific species. Zeltari defenders on one world had been exposed to a virus that attacked their nervous systems, leaving them paralyzed but alive to watch their facilities being destroyed. Krogan troops on another world had faced nanomachines that dissolved their rock-like skin, causing agony but not death. The message was clear: surrender and live or resist and suffer. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, "we are receiving a priority message from the Hegemony High Command." The main screen activated, showing High Chancellor Vex Thara. Behind her, Admiral Korathvin could see other species representatives, and all of them looked terrified. "All fleet commanders are ordered to fall back to the core world. Vexathara announced. "We are implementing the final protocol." Korothvin felt his blood chill. The final protocol had never been used in the hegemony's 10,000-year history. It meant the complete militarization of their entire civilization. Every ship, every weapon, every resource would be concentrated for one final desperate battle. "Chancellor," he said carefully, "what about the outer colonies? The Rim territories? We are abandoning them," Vexathara replied bluntly. "All populations are being evacuated to the core worlds. We will make our stand here." The screen went dark, leaving Korothvin staring at his reflection in the blank display. In less than 2 years, the humans had forced the galaxy's greatest military power to abandon half their territory and retreat to defensive positions. But even as the hegemony prepared for their final stand, human fleets were already moving deeper into their space. The recordings from their attacks showed ships that incorporated not just captured hegemony technology, but improvements that their original designers had never imagined. Human energy shields that could absorb and redirect incoming fire. Human weapons that fired projectiles through dimensional rifts, making them impossible to dodge or intercept. Human ships that could phase in and out of normal space, attacking from directions that should not have existed. Most terrifying of all were the reports from prisoners who had been returned during prisoner exchanges. They spoke of human research facilities where captured alien technology was not just studied, but improved upon and integrated into new weapons systems. The humans were not just copying alien technology, they were making it better. The hegemony had awakened something that they could not understand or defeat. They had attacked a species that treated warfare not as a political tool, but as an evolutionary process. Every battle made the humans stronger, smarter, and more dangerous. As Admiral Korothvin prepared to retreat to the core worlds, he received one final message on an encrypted hegemony frequency. The transmission showed a human female in military uniform, standing on what appeared to be the bridge of a captured hegemony dreadnought. "To all hegemony forces," she said calmly, "this is Admiral Elena Vasquez. We know you are retreating to your core worlds. We know you plan to make a final stand. We want you to understand that this war is already over." The camera pulled back, showing the bridge of the ship in detail. Every console, every system, every piece of technology was being operated by human personnel. They had not just captured hegemony ships, they had learned to use them better than their creators. "We are not coming to conquer you," Vasquez continued. "We are coming to teach you the most important lesson in galactic history. When you declare war on humanity, you do not get to decide when that war ends. We do." The transmission ended, leaving Korothvin alone with the terrible understanding that his civilization was about to face an enemy that had turned war itself into an art form. The end came not with the thunder of massive fleet battles, but with a whisper of surrender transmitted across the quantum networks that connected every hegemony world. Admiral Korothvin stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the last battle group of the once mighty hegemony prepare to surrender to a human fleet 1/10 their size. Around him, his bridge crew worked in silence, their faces showing the exhaustion of beings who had fought a war they could not win against an enemy they could not understand. "Sir," his communications officer reported quietly, "the human fleet is requesting permission to come aboard." Korothvin closed his eyes. 3 years ago, such a request would have been laughable. Now it was simply the final humiliation in a series of defeats that had broken the greatest military power in galactic history. "Grant permission," he said. "Signal all ships to power down weapons and prepare for boarding." The human shuttle that docked with his flagship was sleek and efficient, incorporating design elements from a dozen different alien species, but somehow making them work together in ways their original creators had never imagined. When the airlock opened, Admiral Elena Vasquez stepped through, accompanied by 2 human Marines and an aide, carrying what appeared to be a standard diplomatic case. Vasquez looked exactly as she had in the transmissions that had haunted hegemony commanders for the past year. Middle-aged, with graying hair and eyes that seemed to see everything, she wore a simple military uniform without excessive decoration. But every being on the bridge understood that they were in the presence of the person who had brought their civilization to its knees. "Admiral Korothvin," she said politely, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting." Korothvin stared at the offered hand for a moment before reluctantly taking it. Her grip was firm but not aggressive, the handshake of a professional acknowledging another professional. "Admiral Vasquez," he replied, "I assume you are here to discuss terms of surrender." Actually, no, Vasquez said, much to his surprise. I am here to discuss terms of peace. She gestured to the aide, who opened the diplomatic case and removed a data pad. The war is over, Admiral. Your forces have fought bravely, but continuing to resist will only result in more unnecessary casualties. What I am offering is a chance for your civilization to survive and rebuild. Korathvin took the datapad and began reading. What he saw shocked him more than any battle report. The humans were not demanding the destruction of the hegemony. They were not seeking to enslave alien populations or strip mine alien worlds. Instead, they were proposing a complete restructuring of galactic civilization based on principles that seemed almost naive in their simplicity. You want to eliminate all military forces above the level needed for system defense? He asked incredulously. That is correct, Vasquez replied. The age of galactic empires is over. From now on, every species will be responsible for governing their own worlds. Trade will be voluntary. Expansion will be through negotiation, not conquest. And who will enforce these rules? Korathvin demanded. Who will prevent conflicts between species? Vasquez smiled, and for the first time, it was not the predatory expression that had terrified alien commanders. It was the smile of someone who had found a solution to a problem that had plagued the galaxy for millennia. We will, she said simply. Humanity will serve as the guarantors of galactic peace. Any species that attempts to recreate the old system of conquest and empire will face the same fate as the hegemony. Korathvin stared at her. You are proposing to become the new galactic empire? No, Vasquez corrected. We are proposing to prevent anyone from becoming a galactic empire ever again. The difference is that we have no interest in ruling other species. We have proven that we can destroy any military force in the galaxy. Now we want to prove that we can keep the peace. Over the following months, the new galactic order took shape with shocking speed. Hegemony worlds were returned to the control of their original species. Trade networks were re-established under human oversight. Conflicts that had simmered for centuries were resolved through negotiations backed by the implicit threat of human intervention. The results were remarkable. Without the need to maintain massive military forces or pay tribute to an imperial government, individual worlds prospered as never before. Scientific advancement accelerated as species shared knowledge instead of hoarding it for military advantage. Cultural exchange flourished as travel became safe and affordable. But the most significant change was in how warfare itself was perceived throughout the galaxy. The humans had proven that their approach to conflict was fundamentally different from anything the galaxy had seen before. They did not fight for territory or resources or glory. They fought to end fighting. When they won, they did not seek to exploit their victory for personal gain. They used it to create conditions where such wars could not happen again. This lesson was reinforced 5 years after the end of the Hegemony War. When a coalition of 3 species attempted to recreate the old imperial system in a distant sector of the galaxy, the response was swift and devastating. A human fleet appeared in the rebellious sector within days of the coalition's declaration of empire. The 3 species found their military forces destroyed before they could mount an effective defense. Their leaders were captured and put on trial for crimes against galactic peace. But most importantly, the populations of their worlds were not punished for the actions of their governments. Instead, they were offered the same deal that every other species in the galaxy had accepted. Govern yourselves, trade freely, and live in peace under the protection of human military might. The message was received clearly throughout the galaxy. Humanity had not conquered the known worlds to rule them. They had conquered them to free them from the cycle of conquest and empire that had defined galactic politics for tens of thousands of years. Years passed, then decades. New species made contact with galactic civilization and were welcomed into the new order. Old conflicts were resolved through negotiation and compromise. Scientific discoveries were shared freely, leading to advances that benefited every world. And throughout it all, human fleets patrolled the space lanes, their ships growing more advanced with each passing year as they incorporated new technologies and ideas from the species they protected. The galaxy learned to live with a simple truth. Peace was possible, but only because humanity had proven that the cost of war was too high for anyone to pay. In the archives of a dozen worlds, historians recorded the same conclusion about the Hegemony War and its aftermath. The humans had not just won a military victory. They had fundamentally changed what it meant to be a spacefaring civilization. They had declared that the age of empire was over, and they had the power to enforce that declaration. The galaxy had learned to be grateful for both their victory and their restraint. No one wanted to find out what would happen if humanity ever decided that peaceful coexistence was no longer possible. The old warning, whispered in a dozen languages on 100 worlds, had become the foundation of galactic law. Never start a fight with humans. They do not stop until they have won everything, and they get to decide what winning means. It was a lesson the galaxy would never forget.